Welcome to the Bad Actor Show. I'm Bill, and I've got Michael and Dee with us. And today we're talking about your digital identity and if you should care about it. And little hints here, you should. Michael, Dee, what makes up a digital identity?
So digital identity is typically personally identifiable information about you. Anything from your name to your address, your phone number, social security number, medical records, things like that. Information that you would expect to be private and protected in one way or another.
Your health insurance company is going to have a record of all your medical records. The healthcare providers they're going to be sharing it. And there are all these points of entry, right, for a bad actor to come in and say, hey, this system's a little older, this system isn't protected, or this system, depending on the size of the bad actor, they may have a 0 day and decide, hey, I can get enough information out of this, I can scrape enough information that I can make it well worth my while to use this particular 0 day.
Oh yeah, and there's lots of points of failure. I mean, even just if you were just sticking with healthcare data in general, you've got your doctor's office, you've got your insurance provider, any hospitals that you might have been to that they need to pull current information from, your pharmacy, for example. They're going to have your
Drugs.
medications and a history of your medications. A lot of them have applications that you sign into and you can reorder them. So, I mean, any of those have any sort of failure in the security of your data, there's no telling what they can actually get access to. And a lot of that is just stored for whatever reason they decide to store it.
Including credentials, right? Security credentials?
Absolutely. And I've known a couple of offices out there that want your healthcare data exclusively through fax. And our phone freaks out there know how secure that is.
Yeah. That technology's been out there for just a little while. So security credentials. So what does that include? That includes usernames. That includes email addresses. Your passwords that are supposed to be protecting
Mother's maiden names.
Mother's maiden name. Yeah.
Security questions, yeah.
If you get the right key, you get the right token, you can actually leverage that into becoming someone else. Back in the day, I was actually able to create a device that looked a lot like a flash drive, but it would exfiltrate all of that just by plugging it into a machine, and I could pretend to be that person. It was crazy. Never did it nefariously, just
Sure.
Yeah.
thought experiment.
Your information, your PII, can be compromised in so many different ways. We've all heard on the news, seen on the news somewhere that there's been a data breach somewhere.
Get into a system they shouldn't be able to get to. It could be somebody physically got access to something on site and was able to pull data out that way, with flash drive or whatever. Maybe a disgruntled worker that still had access. Apart from that, more than likely, it's negligence on the part of the company. They think that they're secure. They don't want to spend any more money on security. They think they're fine. And then, somebody figures out, oh, you've left something outdated for a very long time. There's a lot of easy ways in, so I'm going to go ahead and get in, get out, all your stuff, and you don't find out till later, typically.
And that's the story that we typically hear, right? That's more often than not what it is. It's just security is underfunded until something happens.
Yeah, and I think with the ongoing breaches that are occurring, that people are kind of seeing that their technology needs to be updated quite regularly. I think folks are realizing that them saving money is actually costing them more money, and throwing a little bit more at it in order to protect everyone is going to be beneficial.
Oh, absolutely.
So and then kind of talk a little bit about identity theft, right? So once they have your information. Let's talk a little bit about that. What's identity theft?
So that's really going to come down to someone, like you said, assuming your identity in whatever capacity they're able to. The fun thing with breaches is maybe your data breached and from one specific incident, and they got some information. Say address, name, and phone number, some other info. And another breach, it was with, let's say, a financial institution. Well, then they have account numbers and everything else. So now they have cross-reference data between those two that they can match. Like, we can basically database all this, and this is all the stuff that matches to you from multiple different sources, multiple different incidents, and that can be a major factor too.
So your identity is almost like a puzzle, and the more times you're breached, you just gain access to more pieces.
Once they make it out with the data, obviously in most cases it's ransomware, and they're going to be threatening the company or group that they managed to pull data out of to pay them money in order to have their, well, that's going to be stuff unlocked. But the data itself, that's typically sold off. If they aren't able to sell it off quickly enough, or they're having troubles doing it, sometimes they'll just throw it on Pastebin, which is just a repository for text files essentially. So it's just out there and it's up for a period of time and then it vanishes. But everybody has access to it at that point.
Like you said, it's just a big puzzle, and now they're piecing together who exactly you are. And we won't even talk about AI or facial recognition. That'd be an entirely different show. But you add that into it, and it completely just changes the landscape of identity theft. So what do we do? What can we do? What can our listeners do where do we start?
A lot of times when you visit a website, it pops up, hey, do you accept all these cookies? And I mean, you like me, yeah, I love cookies. Chocolate chip are my favorite, right? Yeah.
Oh, oatmeal raisin over here.
But those cookies are little pieces of data that could be part of that puzzle. Whenever that pop-up comes up and it says, hey, do you accept all these cookies? There's typically a menu that you can go into and say, well, I see these, they say essential only, but then these, and these are functional and targeted, and they don't need to be on in order for the website to work. So you can just typically toggle those off.
Apart from that, finding out if you're in a breach, again, sometimes some of the larger ones that have happened recently, the companies will reach out. You'll receive an email, which often goes into spam. Let's be honest. If it's something from ATT, for example, you're never going to actually see it. Sure, they did their due diligence because they're supposed to, but no. But there are tools you can access that will give you information about what information of yours is already out there. One would be a website called Have I Been Pwned? It's .com at the end. You're able to put your email address in, and you can check to see what they have populated over time from being access to these public pastes of what breaches that you have been listed as and been found in specifically. And you'll probably be surprised if you've had an email address for a while. You'll probably see multiple in there. You'll see companies that have had breaches that you were like, how did that happen? Or I only joined that temporarily. It might have been some sort of service that you went into. I think there was like some fitness apps, for example, on iPhones. Where you had to enroll, and so some of your data went there, and then more data went there. That happens pretty frequently. But checking that out can give you a pretty good idea of if you are involved in one of these mini breaches, and again, more than likely you are. I run into the assumption that everybody has been breached in one way or another.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily an all or nothing thing, right? Like it could just be your breach includes your email address. And it kind of all goes back to the pieces of the puzzle aspect of things. You're in a couple of breaches, and maybe your email address, maybe an actual address and name, and you're not doing too bad. If you're in a couple hundred breaches and it has a address history, maybe we start looking at going to those websites that have been breached, see if they have a opt-out option. See if there's a way that you can say, hey, I don't want my address stored. I don't want my information. You were irresponsible with my information, so I'm removing that privilege of my information from you. If you don't use the application, shut the account. Mm-hmm. Just shut the account outright.
And if you in the last 10, 15 years, there's just been this flood of apps that everybody wants to use. Everybody's trying to make life a little easier with these apps, and people have kind of just been a little loose with the data, and everybody's trying to funnel in folks for free to suck them in to use their app or their web page, and then as they use that funnel process and they get their email or some other information, because everything asks for passwords, a lot of folks I've noticed will use the same password for a bunch of different apps, which, I mean, You know, yeah. I mean, everybody's done it, and we're learning that it gets a little bit easier and easier for the bad actors to actually profile you based on some of the passwords that you may have used in the past. And that's why you'll notice that with your Android or your iPhone, it will character generate and then out of convenience store these passwords for you, making it a little bit more difficult. So kind of gone are the days of us using easy passwords, because they can kind of put things together that way. So you said that haveibeenpwned.com is a good website for them to visit. Now, how do you spell pwned?
PWNED.
So it's haveibeen pwned.com, and
Yep.
we'll put that out there in a link for you. And then there are a couple of other pages that we have too. There's some free ones out there, and we'll link that in our in the description. And then also there are some paid solutions out there too, because we don't expect everybody to have gobs and gobs of time and go out there and just find out what's happened with their personally identifiable information. I mean, you've got lives, you have careers, you've got families, and your PII is important, but you're not the bad actor. You're not the one who spends their time trying to harvest your information. So we're going to try and make it as easy as possible for you, and just kind of wanted to touch on what that information is, and what your digital identity is, and how to protect it. So haveibeenpwned.com, that's a good one to see if your email's been included in any breaches. It does a real good job of showing that. And then again, we'll show some others in the description. So reach out and chat or comments depending on what platform you're using, and we'll do our best to answer questions, and just stay safe.